Today I am here with Tracy Zink from Indianola, Nebraska, and she was our big winner for the sorghum competition in 2022, claiming all three of our awards, including the greatest grain yield, the highest input use efficiency, and the most profitable farm. So we're going to visit a little bit with Tracy today about her and her operation and how her feelings are towards the TAPS competition and her big win. So thanks for joining us today, Tracy. It's great to have you.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Anytime we can talk about TAPS, it puts a smile on my face.
Well, thank you. So let's get started. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your operation and maybe how you got to know about TAPS.
Sure. Well, I'm third generation here. We're in the southwest corner of Nebraska, and Red Willow County is where most of our ground is. We do both irrigated and dry land, and we have our rotations consist of corn, soybeans, wheat, and sorghum. And how I got kind of started with TAPS was as I got back, this is my 11th year being back on the farm, 12th, somewhere in there. And I would go to the crop production meetings religiously every year to North Platts, where I always headed, and Chuck Burr presented every time. And as they started presenting, telling about the TAPS program, I think it was the second year they started sorghum, that they had done it 1 year in corn, and so Chuck knew me by that time, and I think he kind of he planted a lot of seeds of interest, I guess, over the years, and so I think he knew I was probably a sucker and going to jump right in on it, and here we are 5 or 6 years later. I can't remember.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that the sorghum competition has been going. This is the 5th year of the sorghum competition, and I believe you have been in it every year. So yes, I think this is the 5th year you've done it. So
there you go.
And thanks to Chuck for pulling those people in those first few years. So
that's right.
Anything that you learned from TAPS results, maybe this year specifically, that surprised you if you've dove into them a little bit further than just at the banquet?
Yeah, I've been studying it in part because I'm always surprised that two things. I'm surprised with how close the yields are often, and or how much money we make, the profitability and stuff. I would expect this competition to have a wider range of yields, just thinking that more people are trying different methods and maybe pushing some extremes, and it just isn't showing up that way in sorghum. And so this year, it looked like we were around 160 average for irrigated, and then I said around 85 dry land for all competitors. And it reminds me a lot of wheat, in that irrigated wheat just is hard to make it be as profitable as dry land. And that's what I'm starting to feel a little bit about irrigated sorghum. And so I'm having to have a little come to Jesus with myself, because I love sorghum. And so I really want it in our irrigation rotation. But I have to go, it's not just about the pennies in the bank, it's about the biomass and the weed control abilities and water efficiency and some different things besides just what was our ROI cash basis. So I'm studying that, because we're ready to introduce irrigated sorghum. Before, no one would have considered it in years past. It was just like, no way, ridiculous. And now there's a lot more beneficial reasons to look at it, and hopefully we're showing some profitability potential.
Right. And just to recap a little bit, if people don't know, so the sorghum competition was started as an irrigated competition, fully irrigated. People made the decisions on irrigation. Last year we changed that. Well, I guess 2 seasons ago we changed that, and we started a dry land component and an irrigated component. So when Tracy's talking about both of those, our competition does include 250 irrigated acres, 750 dry land acres. So and then we do a weighted average for the competition results. So that's kind of what Tracy's talking about there. So
I think it's a neat component too. That we're seeing both sides, and that you can really see when you look at the nitrogen use. being able to see the difference between the yields of the wet when you have irrigated and not, it's really been interesting. So I'm glad we did that extra feature, the extra type.
Yeah, it has definitely been interesting for us on the backside to see those results as well.
Good,
So um,
good.
okay, so what were some of your philosophies or goals in the TAPS program this year? I know you've been in it multiple years and maybe your philosophies and goals have changed, but specifically this year, since you were the big winner, you want to share some of those things with us?
Well, I spent a little more time this year kind of getting out of my operation. So I've always done it very close to what I do on my farm. I'll tweak populations a little bit, something realistic. I'm not a huge risk taker, even though there's no true risk involved where I'd lose money, you know. So yeah, I'm a little cautious anyway. So um, the the philosophy has been maintain as close to what I will do when I implement irrigated. But there's still that element of competition in it. And I find myself thinking about that with some of the decisions. I might be a little more aggressive marketing because there isn't a risk. If I think the price is great, whereas I may only do a 10,000 contract for myself for the farm, for TAPS, I might do 20, you know, something like that, where it's just a little, you know, I've got skin in the game, but, you know, I'm still going to make it if I don't. But the crop insurance, that's one that, you know, I'm not going to lose my farm if I don't have enough crop insurance on. And so in some ways I don't want to just completely do away with it because then I would have more money. So it's been a tug for me to figure out which way to do it, more along the gamesmanship or more along the practical standards.
Right. Well, that's interesting to hear and know from year to year how you've kind of changed it up too.
I did spend a lot of time this in preparation for this year going back to previous years and kind of just looking and seeing what others had done. Because when my main focus is thinking about that population. So, you know, hybrid makes quite a bit of difference also. We've seen that when everything's consistent. So the population, I took a bigger step this year, more than just like a 2,000 seed difference or something. I went 5 to 7,000 different. And so
Mhm.
it'll be fun for me to see, is that as far as I'll push it, or will I even try more or different next year?
And I know you also had one of the lower amounts of nitrogen that you put on the dry land plots. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you made that decision?
Well, I religiously watched the soil samples, and there was a considerable amount there. So I really looked close at what I think my yield goal is. And then I fertilized about 85% of that and see if my residual would take me above if the growing year, you know, allows. And so it's there's a lot of uncertainty when it's not your soil because you don't know if it's tied up or you don't know, you know. um, I also only soil sample down to 20 inches, and the soil sample we get from TAPS I think goes to 30, 25
Okay.
inches or 30.
Yeah.
So that was new for me to be watching that and see if maybe I can put a little less on at home, because if it's there for TAPS, it's there in, you know, in my normal practice, I think.
A great takeaway for others to make sure to keep an eye on those soil samples and the importance of doing soil
For sure.
sampling. So,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So, is there anything, I think you've kind of hit on it, but is there anything that you might try differently in TAPS or on your own operation next year after seeing this year's TAPS results?
Well, I do think I am ready to introduce irrigated sorghum. So if our winter wheat crop that we put on our pivot fails, we will go in with sorghum. That's just, there will not be a corn crop or a beans in there. It will be sorghum. And if we don't go into the season with an adequate soil profile, I think we may have to split some of our pivots, and we would do half of sorghum and half corner beans, depending on the herbicides that we're spraying, because it gets a little touchy when you're that close together. But I'm just committed to sorghum, and I'm gonna do what I can to. I think I will be more aggressive this next year in possibly the fertigation. I can't remember if we did fertigation this year. We just had irrigation was scheduled, but I think
Yep.
we could still put some nitrogen on or
We
with the
just did
Y drop.
pre-plant and side dress
Yeah,
opportunities in sorghum this year. So you didn't have the
yeah,
opportunity to fertigate, but that is something that you've had in the past. So you can definitely
right.
speak to that from participating in past years. So
And that's been one thing for me is it's easy with the technology to try different things, but I don't have those things at my disposal. And so I've tried to not go too crazy. We could have fertigation. So there's one. We can side dress. So that's an important thing for me to really watch and try to see if it's beneficial for for income. So those are the things that I'll be watching close. Is a little bit more of the in season tweaking if I can.
it's always great to hear from a producer and how they're putting their what they've learned on TAPS back onto their own operations. So we always enjoy hearing those
Well, and
stories.
I tell you, Crystal, one of the things that I will do my very best to do next year that I wasn't able to do this year, just with some scheduling issues, is attend more of the functions. I learned a lot in previous years at those mid-season and the conferences that you host when you, even if you don't go to the field and look, we're getting those updates and we're talking to other people. And so I really missed that this past year. And so I'm hopeful that things will be different in 23 and allow me to attend more.
We enjoy putting those on, and we like to see that peer to peer relationship that comes from those events. So that's always one of our best decisions, I think, is to put on those
I
events. So
and some of the most I think beneficial getting out of it is what what you learn talking to others, and it doesn't stop at the TAPS competition. I continue to talk and network with these other sorghum growers across the state, and down in Oklahoma now too. Also, it's just been fun and it's refreshing.
that's great. Well, I was going to follow up with what's your favorite part about TAPS and talk a little bit about what you enjoy the most, but I think you just hit on it. So so
That's about it. I truly those two things, the peer-to-peer experiencing the new technology that's out, and then just meeting, networking, and kind of expanding your awareness of both the crop and what's coming in our industry.
we're glad to be a part of it, and we're glad to have you in our TAPS competition, and we're excited for the 2023 growing season for sorghum. We are gonna, just as an update, we are gonna move the sorghum competition to Grant, Nebraska at the Stump International Wheat Center. So might be a little bit different managing it down there with different soils and everything, but we'll see how you do
I
next year,
know
right?
it's going to be like starting over, I think, but it'll be, that's what they say. If you're not, if you're good, but I mean, there's a lot that goes into it and a whole lot of luck also. But being able to take your practices and implement them in different locations, that's what we all try to do when we're looking for different land to rent. And so that's one thing that I'll be looking for. It's like, okay, can I research those soils and still do what I've been doing and be successful with with the crop I raise. So I'm thinking about that. I'm really anxious for March so we can start marketing and get things going.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, and we appreciate everything that you do to advocate for the TAPS program as well. So thank you for being a part of it.
My pleasure.